It's kind of like just regarding coaching education, and I think that instead of like having coaches meetings and stuff like that, I'd rather just have coaching discussions. But I also kind of want to, like put that out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of have transparency, because you never see clubs share their philosophy or their curriculum. A lot of clubs don't have curriculums. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I want to discuss. Also, I wanted to discuss your season with South, because I remember at the beginning of the season you said that you were more confident, that you felt more confident as a coach after working with the players all summer.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went and watched you guys play East, I had a parent that I'm not going to name say, "Oh, Carissima is like coaching this year. She's like actually like saying words and like giving direction." Because in the past they never even heard your voice.
Well, yeah, I was probably louder this year, but I mean, I think like the girls who I've coached previously heard me, but I think this year I was definitely more confident just because I've had so much more coaching experience. Like before, I feel like this past year I was just coaching little kids here and there, which I enjoyed a lot, but I think now like I've just coached more kids at that age group. And it's just a repetition thing. I mean, just like with anything, I feel like the more you do something, the more comfortable you get with it. So, yeah.
So now you're at the point where you're designing your own sessions here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if you, like, do you want to coach teams? Do you want to be a head coach at like the high school level? Or are you good in this realm of just training kids?
Well, right now I think I'm good with where I'm at. Like I enjoy helping out at South because obviously I went there. I'm coaching with two coaches who I played for, and I love being back in that environment. And I also love being here where we get to coach such a variety of kids from different clubs and different places, and I feel like I enjoy that more than maybe being with one club or like one team all year around.
And that's what I always say is that we make a bit more of an impact because we can work with 100 players in a week. If you coach at a club and get 2 or 3 teams, you have 40 kids for the entire year. So you don't get to make as much impact and have influence on several other, players and whatnot.
I think like the reach that we have just goes beyond one specific age group, whether it's boys, girls. I mean, we have such a variety of kids coming in here, and I think I enjoy being able to kind of help out in so many different areas rather than just sticking with one group for an entire year, and that, or maybe even more than 1 year,
Yeah. And the girls today, that was the best session that I've had with that group in years, and I'm very happy. And I think it is it's a direct reflection on maybe they're just growing up.
I was gonna say I think it's a maturity thing too.
I think so too.
When players get to a certain point, I think they realize that if I want to play soccer after high school, you have to start dialing it in and focusing on that. I think it can be easy at times, especially when they're getting just all players in these clubs might be getting so much training that it almost becomes, I don't know even what the word is, but just like it just becomes the usual for them. It's nothing out of the ordinary, and I think that can kind of get maybe like meticulous, or I don't know what I'm saying.
No, I mean
like, do you know what I mean? I don't know what the word for it is, but like it's just something that they're used to that happens every single day, and it's not necessarily like maybe their focus in the past hasn't been on, okay, what am I going to do after high school? But I think players get to a certain point where they're a little bit more mature and they're growing up and realizing that, if they do have intentions of playing after high school, then they kind of have to start focusing on that.
And I think that has to come from the player. I think we're seeing it where it's coming from the club it's coming from the coaches, but it's coming from the parents. We have parents that are just nuts with all these, like, worrying about who they email, and they still have 4 years left. It's like, why are you stressing out over an email when it's like we're so focused on getting kids recruited and scouted, and we forget to, like, we're still developing players and we're still like a team. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like so much of coaching right now is, okay, what coaches are you emailing? Who are you asking to come out and play or come out and watch you play? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Instead of just like, okay, this is our game plan. Well, like,
yeah, and I think also a part of it is like kids need a chance to be kids. You know, it's like this whole, I feel like college recruiting process and things like that are just getting so much earlier these days. And that's all, I feel like, not all, but that's a huge part of what players are focused on, even like towards the end of middle school, I feel like, which to me is just, it's tough. That puts so much pressure on the players, and they need a chance to grow and mature, and they just need a chance to play and be kids. And I mean, I don't know. I'm thankful that, you know, when I was that age and playing, like, it was not like that really at all. You know, like going into high school, I would say I didn't feel like I had that pressure, like thinking about, am I going to get recruited? What do I have to do to be recruited? And, you know, I know things have changed, obviously. Like, I don't even know. I mean, Buffalo didn't have like a team that was in the, like, these bigger leagues around, or yeah, so things were different. I mean, it looked a lot different, but I think things have just changed so much now, so that kids are so focused on that type of thing rather than like the development part of playing.
So I think instead of the players saying, I want to play at this level, I think it comes from the club pressure, and the club puts the pressure on the parents, and then the parents put the pressure on the kids.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just a cycle, and it's almost like, though, that they don't necessarily, not that they don't know any better, but that's how it is. It seems like everywhere these days, you know? So it's like, okay, well, if people around the rest of the country are getting their names out and talking to colleges, then, you know, we have to also, which I understand that pressure, but it's, I don't know, I think it's honestly kind of unfortunate for the players.
When you were gonna go to Colgate, when did that process start for you? When did you know that you wanted to go to Colgate?
I was trying to think about this because I don't remember honestly the exact timeline, but I think I committed like the beginning of my junior year to them.
Okay.
So obviously you start the process like before that and earlier in high school. I would say my sophomore year is when I started like taking tours and kind of seeing what was out there.
Who else? What other tours did you go on? Like, what other schools did you visit?
I visited UB. I also visited Penn State, West Virginia. Oh my gosh, what other schools did I visit? I'm trying to think.
And what was it about Colgate? Was it academic? Was it the money that you were given?
Not necessarily. I think it was just kind of everything. It was kind of like the vibes that I got from the coach and the team. I mean, it's a beautiful campus. The academics are really, really high. You know, and at that time they had a really good soccer team too. And there was other girls from Buffalo actually on that team. So it just kind of felt like a good fit for me at that time.
Was Jenna Rabel on there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, then you get there, and for me, it just didn't end up being a good fit. I mean, I went in obviously with an injury, which was hard.
Yeah. We've covered that.
Yeah, but then even just like the location, it's a very small school. It's, you know, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But I mean, I know people who have loved it there. So it really just kind of depends on the person, and about finding the right fit for you. And that's one thing too, I feel like with younger players, they, you know, when you're going through that process, even for myself, like I felt like it was the end all and be all decision. Like that was the decision that you had to stick with for like the rest of your life, you know, and it can feel like that because of all of the pressure and the time and the commitment and the money and all that stuff that you put into it. But I think it is important for players to know that, you know, if something doesn't feel right, or if you don't, you know, if you're not super happy and just feel like it's not a good fit for you, those decisions can be changed. Now that's, it has to go in balance with, like, if you get to a school and you don't get any playing time, your freshman year, that's not necessarily a reason to transfer. I mean, it's really up to you, but I don't know. I think players have to kind of balance that out and see, what fits for them.
I mean, UB is dealing with a bunch of kids in the transfer portal. I mean,
yeah. I think
that's what Marcy said, at least.
I really don't know that many specifics. I think a lot of teams probably are at this point. I mean, everything with COVID, I couldn't imagine being in college right now just because schools, all these players got that extra year of eligibility, which then probably has kind of set schools up for something that they haven't necessarily planned for before that.
And all of a sudden, they're not recruiting or it seems this way, that they're not recruiting as many high school kids. They're recruiting the transfer portal, and they're like, well, we have these kids for one more year, so we don't have to get a center mid right this second. You know what I mean? Or I don't know. And it's weird. Like, I was talking to Abby Bashara, and I asked her, like, when did you want to go to Cornell? How did, like, basically the exact same question I just asked you about Colgate. And she was like, oh, since I was like 7th grade. I was like, okay, so she's an outlier. But most of these kids, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't want to be a high school kid right now. And everything is behind right now because of COVID.
Yeah.
Everything is behind. And most of these classes, these 2022s aren't, a lot of them are not committed. And these schools aren't even starting on their 2023s yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's COVID has messed up a lot of things for a lot of people, and this is just the trickle-down effect, I think, that we're seeing, from COVID. It's tough. It's tough for coaches, it's tough for programs, and it's really tough for players,
Yeah. How was it? I mean, with school, at Lancaster, with your school psych, are they still like going through all the COVID protocols and everything?
Yeah, I mean,
everybody's wearing a mask.
Everyone has to wear a mask. Kids have to be spaced out while they're eating lunch, like when their masks are off. Even like in the cafeteria, I mean, they're like single desks. Like kids aren't like super close when they're eating. Obviously in the classroom they're spaced out a little bit. When they have their masks on, it's like slightly different rules. Like they can be, I think it's like 3 feet. I don't even know the exact.
So they're eating in the cafeteria though.
Yes.
Because I think last year kids were eating in the classroom.
Yeah, I heard that too. Well, in the cafeteria, like at least at the schools that I'm at, the desks are like, they don't have like those big lunch tables. Like they're all individual desks that kids sit at. And they have pretty much like assigned desks, because then if kids get sick, you have to be able to like contact trace who they were sitting around. So if they just let them go in there and sit wherever they want, it would be hard for them to like track the exact people that they were near. So like every lunch period has like pretty much assigned desks in the lunchroom, which is tough on kids. But I mean, I understand it because of all of the protocols that are in place, but it's another thing, that kids have differently than before, obviously. And that goes kind of with the whole social piece. I know we've talked a little bit about the effects that COVID has had on kids. And
well, for sure. I mean, we have players that it just exposed kids and like what their real focus is. The kids that, just regarding soccer, the kids that love soccer worked every single day on their game. And then there's some kids that are like, oh wow, I don't have this schedule anymore, I can do whatever I want, and they realize that they don't love it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I have no idea. How is school psych? How are you enjoying that?
It's going well. I really enjoy it. I mean, like we've mentioned kind of with COVID, I mean, things have been, I feel like, absolutely crazy in schools lately, like all over the place, not even just, the district that I'm in, but I think coming back from a pretty much almost close to 2 years, like a year and a half or a little over of things just going so differently than any of these kids have been used to, really anyone has been used to, right? I mean,
Right.
So, there's definitely things I think that I'm seeing in the schools that I think COVID has had an effect on, like socially for kids. Kids experience a little bit more anxiety, things like that is all starting to come out. And, I think that's what I'm seeing so far at the schools. But, I mean, overall, it's been good. I really enjoy it.
Is the staff ever, like, getting sick of all the COVID protocols or anything?
Not from what I've seen. I mean, the COVID protocols, like, it's really just wearing masks and, like, having kids' desks spaced out. But that's how it was all of last year. I mean, there's not, like, I would say any, like, crazy protocols. It's more so just what people have been used to. So, and, like, it's nothing, like, new. I think it's more so what we're seeing with kids from the effects of not being in a normal school schedule for the past year and a half,
So what you've talked about this in the past about you just by now you're 5 months into the school year. Do you see the same kids over and over and over again, or are you still like in that testing mode where you're just testing like as many different kids as possible to see?
Well, there's some kids that I see like on a weekly or monthly basis. But then obviously, like, there's things that pop up where if you see like kids need more support, then you would obviously see them after that. So it's kind of just an ongoing process. It's really just based off of students' needs and like what teachers or parents or even students themselves are feeling.
Now, I don't know how to word this. With what happened in Oxford, let's say there's warning signs. Let's say, have you been trained? Were you ever trained at UB with dealing with kids with suicidal thoughts or wanting to hurt others at all? Have you had any training in that, or like, are they training you now? Is that a school psych's role, or is that more like it can't be a guidance counselor's role?
Well, I think it has to be a team approach. I mean, it has to be the psychologist, if schools have social workers, school counselors, any type of support staff like that, but also from, administration, teachers. I mean, I think, it was a complete like tragedy what happened there, but, I think it's not necessarily one specific person in the school building's role. It has to be all of the support staff and adults on the same page, more so in a team approach, kind of trying to identify students who are at risk and, who need support. But yeah, like in my training, I've been trained in those areas, in grad school, but also like at the specific district, there's protocols and trainings you have to go through, at the beginning of the year and to be employed by these districts. But, it's tough. I mean, it's so sad what happened there, but when you have kids who are showing you warning signs and things like that, those have to be taken seriously for everybody's safety. And, they have to be dealt with, I think, from a team standpoint, from everyone in the building.
Has anybody talked about, I know we're far away, I'm asking because it hits close to home, but do you think this is going to change protocols? So like Columbine made everybody have like a code red emergency response, right? So like schools go into lockdown, all the doors are shut, everybody does Lancaster do drills on that stuff?
Oh yeah.
So I wonder. So Columbine changed the way we do. I mean, we never did tornado drills. We did lockdown drills. I wonder if this is going to change the protocols. If there's like a troubled kid, you know what I mean? Because supposedly, I think I sent you that video where supposedly the parents were in the school that same day, meeting with a counselor about the kid's behavior, about a drawing and stuff like that, and then the kid supposedly changed the drawing and whatnot. Have you seen all that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think has anybody talked about protocol since then? Because I think Orchard Park had a threat earlier this week, and Orchard Park was shut down.
Mm-hmm. I mean, from what I've seen, not necessarily a change in protocols, but like more so just making sure that you're following up on like the risky and like the at-risk behaviors that you might be seeing. I mean, you know, with that student in particular, that student showed all the warning signs that you could really ask for from like a support staff standpoint as far as like trying to prevent things like that happening in schools, right? I mean, he, based on everything that's come out in the news, like there was behaviors, there was drawings, there was things posted, I mean, things like that. So, you know, I think it's just important for schools, once they have that information, to take it seriously and to, you know, make sure that they're taking all the necessary steps to protect everybody. I mean, it's tough. The day and age that we're in, I mean, it's almost like you can't be too cautious, you know, with this type of stuff, because you don't know. I mean, there's so much out there too now these days, like on social media, and it, you know, I will say with the social media stuff, even just this past week, a bunch of districts I've seen like in the news have had threats and things like that. So you kind of have to walk that fine line as to like what's a real threat and what's, you know, kids just saying things online. But that's where, I mean, I've seen a lot of these districts like get law enforcement involved and kind of trying to be able to decipher what is real and what is, you know.
In Michigan that week, they started arresting kids for any types of threat. Mm-hmm. And Oxford, actually this week, the high school is out until January, but the rest of the school district was trying to go to school. And then my other nephew's middle school had a threat, and now they're completely shut down. But I think, what about like lawsuits? Have you guys been taught anything about, be careful, like not misdiagnosing, but let's say that you see something and you go to a counselor or you go to a principal or somebody else and you say, I'm worried about this kid. And then you contact the parents. And like, I could see some parents having lawsuits against teachers or somebody for, you know what I'm saying? Because we're so over litigated these days. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to cover yourself in that regard too, right?
Yeah. I mean, schools, at least the district I'm at, and I think schools pretty much in general should have steps for those types of things. So like there's threat assessments, lethality assessments, like things like that.
What was that word?
Lethality.
Okay. What's lethality?
Like it's like an at-risk, like suicide assessment for students.
Okay.
But there's like steps that you have to take for things when they're presented to you, you know, like the threat assessments. If there's a student making a threat, okay, then you have to go down, you know, a list of like just different things that you have to do to make sure, not necessarily that your tracks are covered, but really to kind of do a deeper dive into what that was about. I would say if a district doesn't do that and doesn't do any due diligence about it, then that's, you know, kind of where I feel like negligence might come in. But it also goes kind of with what I was saying earlier about like a team approach. You know, it shouldn't be on the shoulders of one person in the school. It's making sure that everyone is aware about it, from administration to the support staff to the counselors to all that type of thing. I mean, it's tough, but...
Do you ever get pushback from somebody being tested for ADD or ADHD or anything like that?
What do you mean?
Pushback from the parents. Like I guess.
Okay, well, so in schools, like, we don't
process?
diagnose kids. Like, you can't diagnose ADHD in a school.
You test them? Because
So,
didn't you say something about, like, testing kids?
so, like, a school psychologist tests kids. They do, like, psychological tests. And based on those tests and, like, academic tests, based on that testing, you can see if kids qualify for supports and services in school. We don't you can't diagnose a kid with something in school. That would obviously have to go through, like, their pediatrician or things like that. You can recommend things if you're seeing, you can recommend things to a parent, but I mean, that's up to the parent to...
It's kind of like outside your
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Yeah. You wouldn't, like, diagnose a student with something, but you can, if it's affecting their academic performance in school, then you can recommend things for them.
Is this something that you're going to want to do for the next 40 years?
Oh my gosh, what kind of question is that?
What? This is your career. This is what
It
you've
is my
chosen.
career.
Yeah.
I enjoy it a lot, so yeah. It's a good field to be in. It's a field that's
Needed.
highly needed, especially...
I don't ever remember having a school psychologist. We had special ed teachers, and then we had guidance counselors. And you get pissed off if people think that you're a guidance counselor, right?
Well, no, it's just different, though.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, or even, like, any school that I was in, I don't ever remember the school psychologist either. I didn't even know I had one. Really, until I got into the school psychology field, I did not know what a school psychologist did. Because, it's like a very specialized area, but I don't know. I mean, I always see postings for psych jobs at schools. I mean, I think it's going to be even more prevalent.
How many school psychs does Lancaster have for the entire district? Do you think it's
I'd have to count, but...
Do you think it's going to a place where every school will have a designated school psych?
I mean, Lancaster pretty much already has that.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
The elementary school psychs move around a little bit.
Okay.
But, I mean, there's a designated psych at the middle school and then a few at the high school.
Gotcha. So?
I feel like this was not that good.
Why?
I don't know.
Why? This is just a conversation. Like, I think this is going to be a way, one, I want to bring in other, other sport entrepreneurs in here, because we have a lot of sublet coaches that come in here and just have a conversation about development or player development and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Right? But it's also going to be a way for me to be able to keep up with players that kind of age out. Mm-hmm. So think about, like, for instance, kids are going to move. And if they're home for Thanksgiving break or Christmas break or something, I could get them in here and we can stay in touch. Mm-hmm. Because, kids get older. I want to get Marcy in here. Eventually, I want to get some of, like, the college players, like Max Quitchoff, in here. Abby Bashara when she leaves. Ella Rudney. I'd like to get parents in here too.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think you should get everyone's perspective. I mean, coaches, players, parents.
Well, there's a parent that I definitely want to get in here where they basically ship their son off to, Minnesota. And I want to know, like, what goes into that process and the sacrifice some of these parents make for these kids. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. Parents make huge sacrifices for their kids. I mean,
it's unbelievable. So,
it is. And
that's just going to be just a wide range, and it's just conversation. I don't care. I don't want it to be like, okay, we hit this bullet point. it just seems too scripted. I don't want it to be. You ever watch a podcast and it's like so scripted and it's just like, it seems
like
fake.
reading off the paper.
Yeah, reading off the paper. Or my favorite is when they have email your questions and they're like, okay, what's your favorite color? It's like, okay,
but email us your questions. You should actually do that, like one of the question boxes.
What, like a frequently asked question or whatnot?
No, like, you know how people put those things on Instagram, like, ask your questions.
Yeah.
You should do that and see what you get.
I think I'd get like 3 questions. And it'd be mostly...
Well, you're never afraid to post anything else on there, so you might as well.
It would be mostly our stupid players being like... asking us dumb questions.
Since when are you scared to post something on Instagram?
I'm not scared. I'm not scared to post anything. I'm just saying.
You should.
I'm just saying, like, it's not.
We don't have that big of a reach yet. Some of our players might have questions, legitimate questions.
Yeah. Most of the questions.
All right, so that's not going to happen.
Well, maybe I'll let you do it when you run social media. No, the biggest questions that players ask me it's all about recruiting. The number one question that I have from parents is, it's all about recruiting. It's all about coaches or emailing coaches or highlight tapes and everything like that. So, I mean, I just wish that wasn't the number one priority with all these players and all these parents and all these clubs. I think it starts with the clubs because it's their recruiting tool. Getting kids signed is the way that they lure. My biggest pet peeve is when a kid in their junior year goes to a new club, signs, and then that club posts and says,
yeah,
look what our player, blah blah blah, just committed here. It's like, dude, you've had them for 6 months. Like, can you give a little bit of credit? Mm-hmm. That is one of my biggest
It's tough
issues.
too, though, like, because that's how it is. I feel like all over the country. So it's like, how do you not do that when clubs all over the place are doing that? And then
100%.
It's just the way clubs are right now. But in order to compete with top clubs, you also have to be doing that. So it's a cycle. I feel like that's.
Yep.
I don't know.
And then the whole like pay to play thing, like some of these families are putting up like with travel and everything. It's like $10,000 a year.
Expensive. I mean.
And people are like, well, coaches on Twitter are always, we have to get rid of pay to play. Well, how the hell are you going to do that? To run these lights, it costs money. To rent field time, it costs money. Mm-hmm. To go to tournaments, it costs money. To refs, to line in the fields, to everything. Everything costs money.
Yeah.
Nothing is free. The only way that we can have free youth soccer is if you have a pro team in your system that makes money, and then that can trickle down to the youth program. That's how Europe does it. Mm-hmm. I just posted something last night about the Novi Jaguars in Michigan. Well, I guess it's Michigan Jaguars now. They just added a UWS team.
Oh, I saw that.
And then the Michigan Hawks just partnered with Corktown, who's in downtown Detroit. And I think that's where it's funny because all these UWS teams are having allegiances with these clubs. It's only a matter of time before FC Buffalo and Flash. I think that's going to happen.
I don't know. I don't have any information.
You should. You're on the board of whatever. What was it called?
The advisory board.
The advisory board.
And I am on it, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything, so.
And you didn't have training last night?
Nope.
You ready to train right now?
Yep.
All right. We are ending this 36 minutes. It's pretty good for the first one.
Yeah.
Done?
Click.
Goodbye.